Hey everybody, this is Queen Mab, not my real name, but don't want my students to find this. And I am here today with somebody who I really consider to be a role model, especially when it comes to social media content posting. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm totally in awe. And I'm so honored that she decided to join us here today. This is my friend, singer and teacher, and I think probably very soon professor in training, and Slovin.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. It's a great way to spend my Saturday.
Yay!
Yay.
Cool. So I just always start out by asking my guests to tell their story. So I know you're from Tucson, right?
I'm no okay, it's a little more confusing than that.
Okay, okay.
I'm from New Jersey originally.
Oh,
I was born in New Jersey, and then we moved to Phoenix when I was 14. So like smack dab in the middle between freshman and sophomore year. Um, and you'd think that would have been a really tough thing, but actually it turned out to be a really great thing because my new school in Phoenix did a huge musical every year, and that turned out to be just a really good like confidence booster for me and a chance to sort of um, take my singing out for a spin because I'd always sung and I'd always done choir and I'd done like some musical theater, little show choir things in New Jersey, but it was so competitive and it was so um, saturated around in that area. Like there were people that I knew in my area from like friends of friends or synagogue or whatever who were like going to New York to do the audition thing as teenagers. And I was like, okay. But then we moved to Phoenix, which is a fantastic big city and has great performance opportunities, but it's a little different. It's much farther away from Broadway. And so I got there and I was like, oh, great. I'll just be in the chorus of the musical the first year because to like pay my dues and stuff. And I got the lead in The Music Man when I was a sophomore. And honestly, if I hadn't, like, I don't know where I'd be right now.
wow.
Yeah. But my mom and stepdad live in Tucson now, which is probably where that came from. So I go there for Thanksgiving,
Awesome.
which is
Very,
great.
very
Yeah.
cool. Very
Yeah. So then I
cool.
went from Phoenix to Chicago to Northwestern and stayed there for a while after graduation. And now I'm at Indiana University, where I did my master's in voice performance and then took a year off to get my ducks in a row, figure out what I wanted to do. And now I am back for my doctorate. And this is my third year of coursework, which means I'm almost done.
Yay.
Sort of. Should be Dr. Slovin in like, 2 years.
Yay.
Maybe, I don't know. Hard to say. Hard to say. But
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah.
So I guess I wonder, you mentioned The Music Man as
Yeah.
being like that moment where, that kind of changed your life. And so what was it about that? Was that when you said, okay, I think I might want to do this professionally?
You know, it took me a long time to know that I wanted to do it professionally. I think it was the first time that I was like, what I have and what I can do is extra special. Because a lot of people can sing, and all people can sing, honestly. Um, and I always had a strong voice. I was always in charge of like the alto section in choir when I was in fourth grade, whatever, because they knew that I could hold the harmonies and I played the piano. But I was always in environments where everybody got a little something. Like I was in a group, little performance group in New Jersey near where I lived where we did these big medleys of musical theater and it was great, but like everybody got a solo. They made sure one year I actually didn't get one. And I remember being like, oh, okay. But it was a place where they made sure that everybody had sort of an equal spotlight on them. And my school in New Jersey was similar, and we didn't do a lot of musicals because it was all girls in New
Mm.
Jersey, that school. So we did a musical my freshman year, but the expectation was that you pay your dues until you're probably a senior, and no freshman was going to get like an actual huge role. Um, and we all had like little solos. Everybody had something. They gave everybody something. And I think that's a great way to be. But also I didn't really understand that the way I could sing was maybe different from the way other people could sing because they kind of made sure that like I didn't really uh I didn't really know. Like I didn't really understand because they didn't want me to, I don't know, get a big head or something. Anyway, but I moved to Phoenix and it was a tiny, tiny school, co-ed for the first time since like second grade for me. And I got there and I was like, oh, I don't expect anything. I've been trained to be like, okay, you got to pay your dues. And it's still that way in a lot of places. Like I have students who are in high school who are like, freshmen don't even get into the musical because the schools are so big. My high school, there were 52 people in my graduating class, something like that. So it was tiny. It was tiny. And I remember walking in for the audition and I sang a song from Camelot and I remember like a hush in the room, like, oh my God. And like I had some callbacks and it was really nerve-wracking. And then they cast me and all the seniors were really angry. But so I felt a little bad. But it was like a formative experience because it was the first time that I had sort of external evidence and not just from like my parents or grandparents or like the cantor at my temple where I did my bat mitzvah and it was like wow. But it was the first time that I had sort of external validation really about it that like no, we're going to give you the biggest part in the musical. There is no I mean a lot of people had great roles, but it was one of the first situations I found myself in where it wasn't like an everybody gets a trophy situation. It was somebody has to have the lead in the musical. There can't be more than one. This is the show. And oh my God, and it was just so exciting. And I will say this because I'm not really in touch with this person anymore, but the guy that I played opposite in that oh my God. I had such a crush on him. So that was really exciting also.
Oh, I love it. A showmance.
No, well, nothing happened. Oh. Whatever. He was a senior and I was a sophomore, and he was very sweet to me, though. He took good care of me and made sure that like nobody was mean to me, for getting the part that everybody wanted. I was like, I can't help it. But yeah, he sort of was like, come on, you're fine. So yeah, so that was a big deal. And then junior year we did Into the Woods and I was Cinderella, and senior year we did The Pirates of Penzance and I was Mabel. So that school was like it was a big moment for me actually, because it was a small place and I was a pretty big fish, and it gave me the opportunity to like try it out and see if I liked it. Because I'm honestly not sure if I had never had those opportunities to be on stage in like a big role that really showcased my voice, would I have thought, I'm gonna go to music school? I'm actually not sure. Like I don't know, and maybe it's not productive to be like, what if that hadn't happened? But it did, and it gave me the confidence and sort of the self belief that I needed to say, I think I could get into music school for this. And I did. So here we are.
Tell me about that decision when you said, okay, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to music school. Like two things, what led to the decision? And then once you started, like what were your goals sort of for going to music school?
Sure. Let me think for a second. So I think there were a couple of things. First of all, I was always kind of aware that nobody cared about this the way that I cared about this. Like my classmates were amazing. I mean, that production of Pirates of Penzance is still one of the highlights of my life. It was so good and we had such a good time. But like, I didn't know anybody else who was as serious about singing and music as I was. And I did a summer program between junior and senior year because I was still thinking I was also a really good student. And I went to a tiny sort of college prep private school and everybody was applying to Ivy League schools. And like, I could have gone any number of directions. I didn't get into any Ivy League schools, but I could have gone a lot of different academic directions. I have a lot of interests. I like languages and literature, and there were a lot of things I was thinking about. But I went to this summer program. It was like an 8-day thing at Oberlin Conservatory. It was like a vocal academy for high school students where you had to bring like 8 art songs, and you had lessons and you had little classes. It was basically like, here is a taste of what it would be like to be in music school.
Mm.
Yeah. And it was just a taste. It wasn't quite as intense as actual music school. But I remember being like, oh my God, I could go to a place where everybody is as serious about this as I am. Oh my God. That was an experience where I was just like, you mean I could go to college and have all of my classes, I mean, except for like gen eds or distros, excuse me. Been at IU so long, I don't remember what they called it at Northwestern, distros. But I remember thinking, I could do this all day. Like me, I lived for music in high school, but I spent almost all of my day, English and history and math and science like everybody else. And I remember being like, you mean I could take this 1 hour of my day that I am like living for through the whole year, and like living for musical rehearsals and choir and my voice lessons once a week, and I could do that as my major for 4 years? Like, sold. But I still wasn't really sure. I still wasn't really sure because my high school didn't really know how to help me with that. And I had a great voice teacher in high school who encouraged me and helped, like, did my pre-screening videos for music school. I still wasn't sure, so I only applied to 2 music schools, and they were schools that had a double degree program, so Northwestern and Oberlin, and then I applied to a few other like liberal arts places with good music programs. And in the end, I remember Oberlin was a little too small for me. We went to visit in the winter, and I was like, I can't. It's too small. And amazing place, but like,
I had the same reaction.
Yeah. And we went to Northwestern. Actually, we went to Northwestern first, so Oberlin had some big shoes to fill because we'd already been to Northwestern. And I remember, and it's funny that your pseudonym is Queen Mab, because I think of the music building, MAB music building.
That's right. Yep.
But I remember the music coming out of the building, like when people would open the windows, even in the winter, because the heat was so it was so aggressive. The furnaces were so aggressive, but you could hear people practicing everywhere.
Yep.
There was music everywhere. There was, I mean, people were kind. I remember my mom and I were sitting in the lounge on the second floor of the MAB, the Voice Lounge, I later found out. And we were like reading the Daily Northwestern, and we were just talking about what we wanted to do. And people, like, unprompted, came up to us and started telling us about the school and started asking me questions about applying and what I wanted to do. And I was just so charmed. And I got in and I came, and like, I remember my first day of choir at Northwestern, and there were like boys who could sing. And we only had like 2 of those in my high school. Oh no, they were fine. We managed, but like, to have a whole tenor section and a whole bass section full of people, I was amazed. I was like, I was so happy. I was so happy. And like, even when I was like crying because I couldn't do oral skills or sight singing, I was still really happy because my focus got to be the thing that I was really passionate about, like, for the first time in my life. And so you asked me about goals too, which, I don't know, kind of nebulous to start with. I always knew people who came in and were like, I'm going to sing at the Met by the time I'm 30. And I didn't really grow up with any of that. Like, we were big Broadway people. You know, I grew up in New Jersey until I was 14 and went to lots of shows. And my parents are big musical theater fans. My grandparents are big musical theater fans. So like, that was what we did. So I said, I'm going to music school, and people said, do you want to be on Broadway? And my answer is still, well, sure. Like, someone gonna let me? That'd be awesome. But I started getting more into classical music in high school because I had a voice teacher who said, musical theater doesn't seem to be challenging you quite the way you want to be challenged. How about art song. And so I don't know, I'm trying to remember like when I had a goal for my singing, like when and maybe this is why I've ended up where I've ended up, is that I didn't really have a clear picture of like, what does professional singing look like? I think the only thing I knew by the time I finished my freshman year, I dropped my double degree after
Oh, what was
freshman.
your double degree?
I don't know. That was the problem. It was a BA. It was going to be a BA, and I went in for my like planning meeting at the end of the first year, and they mapped out the rest of my undergrad. And I looked and I was like, I'm never going to have time to take a cool class just because. And I dropped it. And I also just didn't have a plan. Like I had friends who were like, I'm going to study history and I'm going to study voice, or I have a friend, John Mellis?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I don't know if we're saying people's full names on here, but anyway, he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer in California. He does more musical theater than I do. And he knew from the very first day, he was like, I'm going to law school. And he double degreed in poli-sci and voice. And for him, it was like he always knew which direction he was going to go professionally, but the voice was so important to him. And I was kind of the opposite, where I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do, but it seems weird to drop all the academic stuff after I worked so hard in high school. So let me do it. I didn't have a direction for my second degree. I didn't know. I was just like, and there's no room to be undecided in that kind of program. You kind of have to plan it out at the beginning. And I just looked and I said, I don't want my my college experience to look like this. I don't know what this is. Like, I don't like it. And I dropped the double degree. And then I ended up with a minor in musicology because I like to write papers. And I took a class with Linda Ostern, who is still the hero of my life. I'd like to be just
that
like
name
her.
Is familiar. I don't think I ever had a class with her though.
Oh, she's the best. She knows everything. No, she doesn't know everything. She knows something about everything. So I remember I took a class with her called Authenticity, which was about, the core question was like, can we recreate the original performing conditions of whatever today? And we talked about Handel and early music, and we talked about country music. Like, can we get back to the original intentions of country music? Probably not. But people brought up so many things. Somebody was like, oh, this reminds me of the punk music scene. And Dr. Ostrom was like, oh yeah, this band is doing this thing and this band. And I was like, I want to be that when I grow up. And in retrospect, now that I'm telling you this, I really should have known that a doctorate was in my future, because all the people I wanted to be were professors. I was never really like, oh my God, that opera singer with that incredible career, that I want to be that when I grow up. I was like, my professors were the ones where I was like, oh, I want to be just like Dr. Ostern when I grow up. Yeah.
So this is a different direction than I planned to go, but now like this question's on my mind, so I have to ask it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things I really admire about you, is that you're a person who, is a professional singer, is a musician, and has a lot of other interests that you talk about and that inform your music and other areas of your life. And I admire this so much, because I don't know how I got this message, if I gave myself this message or if other people gave it to me, but I, in school, always felt like, okay, I have to do music and only music, and I have to really specialize. And then as a percussionist, the message I get is you got to pick one. I mean, you got to play everything, but you got to pick one instrument and get really, really, really good at it. And like, that doesn't work for me. Like, I'm a person who needs to do like a whole bunch of things. And I look at you and I'm like, you're totally like that. And I had no idea that you were originally a double major.
Oh yeah.
And it was interesting to me now to know that you dropped that, and you're still a person who's like, I want to do lots of things. So like, tell me about that. Like, tell me about the lots of things you like to do.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Just to go back to dropping the double major, it was, I like research and writing and history and languages. And it honestly, like, being a voice major is a really good place for that also, because you have to be into poetry. You have to be good at languages. I mean, you don't have to be, but like, ideally you're interested in languages and you're interested in the language of song and opera. And you have to know about the history of what you're singing, because so much of it is so old. So it's important to know to a certain extent. Like I always found people sometimes are like, oh, like music school, that doesn't seem super rigorous. And I'm like, you'd be shocked because we have to know so many things to inform our performances. Everybody does, but for singers, it's like you, in order to internalize the stuff that you do and the
Mm,
music that you sing, you have to understand the time period in which it was written. You have
mhm.
to know something about the composer and the poet. You have to know what the poem means word for word, and then you have to interpret it and know what it means for you. And you have to pronounce it properly. And ideally, to pronounce it properly, you learn a little bit to speak all those languages. You know, not all of them. I'm singing in Czech on an upcoming
Oh my
recital.
God.
Sure don't speak that language, but you know, eventually I have passing, I mean I'm pretty much fluent in French, but I have passing fluency in German and like okay familiarity with spoken Italian. And it plays into all the things that I was good at in high school, like all of
Mm.
them. Um, so yeah, and when I discovered that I could minor in musicology, I was like, but all the things, this is all the things that I'm good at and interested in one discipline. And I
Wow.
remember actually my professors, I had some really good validation from those professors. I think I went to Dr. Ostern's office like once a week to talk about like just whatever. um, but did you ever take a class with Drew Davies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I took his American art song class. I took a couple classes with him, and I remember him saying to me specifically, not just to everybody, but when I told him what I wanted to write a paper about, and he said to me, "You're really good at this. Be thinking when you pick your paper, be thinking about future papers. Be
Mm.
thinking like pick topics that you can take later and turn into a dissertation or turn into something else." And I remember being like, pshaw, I'm going to be a singer. But I think that validation really helped me kind of realize that I could do a lot of different things. But yeah, so as you can see, you know, literature, although mostly what you can see is Harry Potter. um, Literature and history and like all kinds of interdisciplinary stuff I'm very into. In high school, again, should have realized in high school, my junior year for AP US history, we had to write it was like a whatever you want to write about 20-page paper, big paper. And I wrote about Porgy and Bess
Oh my
in
God.
high school.
Oh
In
my
high
God.
school, I was like, I think I could write a history paper about music and about
Mhm.
singing. And I wrote a paper about whether Porgy and Bess was an opera or a musical, which is still a debate we're having. Nobody is sure. Um, and I did a lot of research about like race relations and Porgy and Bess and like the fact that it premiered on Broadway because the Met was segregated. And
Mm.
and Gershwin said, I won't let this piece be performed in a segregated theater. It's an all black cast. Um, and I did a lot of research into like black musical styles that informed Gershwin. And I mean, I'm a lot more I'm a lot more nuanced about it now because this was like 2005,
Mhm.
2005. But getting to college and realizing that that's like a thing you can major in was pretty wild to me. So um, yeah, I always found that my music major kind of was kind of an amalgamation of everything that I thought I needed to make, like all the stuff that I thought I needed to do in that double degree turned out to actually just be a part of my music major, and I didn't understand that on the way in.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I need to think about that one for a second.
right.
Wow, that your music major like was your double degree.
It kind of was. It really was. And because I was also so passionate about it, this is something that I have a little bit of a soapbox about talking to young musicians about going to music school or going or
Mhm.
majoring in music. And a lot
Mhm.
of people will say, a lot of sort of musicians who have either decided not to go professional or have sort of slogged through it for a while and then decided to go another route will say, oh, don't major in music. Major in something more practical, major in something else. And my feeling is that, like, all else being equal financially, and I
Mhm.
will admit to incredible resources and family support
Mhm.
and advantages in that area. So I will say that there was never a question for me of whether I could go to music school. My family was like, go to music school. And I know that's not the case for everybody, and it's an incredible position of privilege to have been able to do that and not worry about anything else. But I always tell people, all else being equal, if you can either afford to go to whatever school you want and major in whatever you want, or if you have a free ride somewhere, you know, in-state school, and you can major in whatever you want and you have a free ride, or you have great financial aid, whatever the case is, major in what makes you really happy. Because I don't know, did I ever take a business course? I didn't. Did I ever take a course that was specifically like, here are skills you're going to need to know to get a temp job in the future because you're going to need one of those? Nobody ever told me about that. But I was so happy to be studying what I was studying all the time that I learned those skills. Like, my writing got really good, and my critical thinking skills and my ability to talk to anyone. I learned all that in college. But because I was like immersed in this topic that made me so jazzed about learning, I learned a lot of what I needed to know. Like financial stuff, I could probably have done better. They could probably provide something like that. But I learned so many life things as a music major because it was so cool to be there. And I was so into it. So that's something that I always say is like, all else being equal, if you can do it and it's what you're really passionate about, don't force yourself into another box just because it seems like it's practical. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know people who majored in all kinds of random stuff in college and don't work in that field and never have. My mom was a painting major.
Oh my God.
At Cornell.
Wow.
My mom went to an Ivy League school and majored in art because that was what her passion was in high school. And she went and she was an art major, and then she went to business school. And you know, she's still a good artist. She's really crafty. And it informs a lot of her life, I think. But she got what she needed to get out of college. My stepdad is a dentist. He was a religion major. Is that what he should have majored in knowing he was going to go to dental school? I don't know. But it makes him a really interesting person.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, I have not been asked this particular question about like, should I major in music? But I guess what I would say to someone in that position is like, there's music as a career and there's music as an undergraduate major. And as you said, you can do music as an undergraduate major, and it is great training for something like law school or business school, because you have to learn to work as a team and you have to
love us. And also med schools love us because we are really good at communicating, and a lot of musicians are very sensitive people with great bedside manner. So go to it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's exciting to hear someone else who thinks about this like I do, because I think about this in my head all the time, and I'm like, oh, okay. So one other question I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned in high school doing the Pirates of Penzance, and I know you're really into Gilbert and Sullivan. Is that when it started for you, or did it start before that?
I think that's when the real obsession started. But I was actually in a production. So I went to theater camp for a while. I went to summer camp for a long time and did lots of plays and things. But I went to theater camp where, again, I never got cast in any big roles because it was such a huge pond. And also I lost my voice like every summer, which should have told me a little bit about where I was headed performance injury-wise, but I didn't know anything yet. So, but I was in a production of The Sorcerer, which is their first full-length show. It's not as good. They did The Sorcerer, and then they did HMS Pinafore. So, like, they didn't really have it figured out by The Sorcerer, but then they worked through some stuff, and Pinafore is a lot better and more famous. But I was in the men's chorus because there weren't enough boys ever. So I was singing like, with heart and with voice, let us welcome this mating to the maid of his choice. And I can still do it, the whole men's chorus part. And so I had it kind of in the back of my head. But when they announced we were doing Pirates of Penzance, I remember being like, operetta? Like, we all wanted to do a musical. And then we listened to it. We got the like Doily Cart recording with Valerie Masterson, who is so glorious, and all these like old school GNS people from the 60s. And we listened to it and couldn't stop listening to it. To this day, I have that recording. Like, I can just do it. All the dialogue and all the stuff, because we just listened to it on a loop in the car on the way to school. So that's where that started. And then I actually wrote a paper on Gilbert and Sullivan in music history at Northwestern, because I remember we were talking about national music, and we were in a discussion section, excuse me. And I remember being like, oh, so like Gilbert and Sullivan is like English national music. And it was like crickets. Nobody knew what I was talking about. Our wonderful TA, whose name I can't remember, but who is an early music specialist, was like, that's interesting. You want to tell us more about that? And I was like, I can try. And then I wrote a paper about GNS as English national music, which I still think it is.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, and then it's such good repertoire for young singers. It's some of it's very demanding, but some of it's not. And so my very first gigs out of college, my very first professional gig was with Light Opera Works, which is now called Music Theater Works, and they performed at Conn Auditorium at Northwestern.
Oh, wow.
I was in the Yeoman of the Guard. It was my very first professional gig, and I covered the lead soprano, which I eventually got to sing also. So I did that, and then there's a couple of excellent sort of community theater GNS groups in the city. There's one in Evanston and one in Hyde Park. And I did the Gondoliers in Evanston, and I did the Sorcerer again in Hyde Park. So this was like the whole first 2 years of my post-college professional life was GNS. And I am still like friends with those people, and they're, great connections. And then it's led me to just like a really rewarding time of learning and go. I've been to the UK to do GNS, not professionally, like semi-professional. You have to like pay a little bit to be in the show and get yourself there. So it's like a vacation where you do GNS, and it's really fun. But it's been a really big part of my life. And part of what I'm sort of reckoning with now is like, when I was younger, I didn't really think about or see some of the ways that GNS can be really problematic in its treatment of women. Although I have some thoughts about that, about how it's like more empowering for women than most people realize. But because we're in 2021, it doesn't look that way.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, they have a show called Princess Ida, which I really love and would love to sing Princess Ida. And it's based on a Tennyson poem by the same, it's called The Princess. And it's about a princess who, rather than marry the prince, opens a college for women. And Gilbert was like a big proponent of women's education. So the point of the show is that the men who think she shouldn't run a women's college look really bad, and they look really stupid. And in the end, they do have her be like, okay, I guess I'll marry you. You're cute. But so a lot of people today like rewrite the ending a little bit because it's so frustrating. But a lot of people are like, oh, it's sexist, and Gilbert was sexist. And I was like, but look at this though. Like, look at the textual evidence. He did have some mom stuff. He had a really rocky relationship with his mom, who surprisingly for the time got divorced and like lived by herself with her adult daughters, like left her marriage.
Wow.
And the men in her family had obviously a big problem with this. And so Gilbert had a really tough relationship with his mom. And so there are all of these older women characters, and some of them are really unflattering, really unflattering. And he makes a lot of kind of age jokes. But you have to, as long as you can be clear-eyed about it, it's really fun stuff. That's where I'm at with that right now.
That's
I have
awesome.
a whole shelf of my bookcase. You can't see, but it's like Sondheim and Gilbert and Sullivan. It's a whole shelf.
God. I love it. I love it. And it was because of you. I didn't realize that there was Gilbert and Sullivan on Family Guy, but like you posted little like clips of it. And I was like, oh, so that's what that is. That's not
There's so much of it. Seth MacFarlane loves Gilbert and Sullivan.
Oh my God. That's so funny. That's so funny.
Oh yeah. So it also really appeals to me in like a nerdy language way.
Oh yeah.
Like, talking about all the stuff I'm into. And if you like language, and you like all the ways that the English language can be manipulated. And if you talk fast, because that's me, it's really appealing. It's really
Mhm.
smart and
Mhm.
clever, and it's always appealed to me for that reason, because it's so sharp.
It's funny because I watched a show. Have you heard of My Big Fat Blonde Musical?
No, tell
Check
me
it.
about
I think you'd really like it. Check it out. This gal made a web series, and it's all about a big woman going to LA and all the things that she faces. But there's this one episode where there's this personal trainer who's like trying to get her to lose weight, and they sing like a modern Major General song where they're
it.
like
Yeah.
carbs and oils, fats and sugars, whatever. And it was so funny because after that, I like had to go to my phone and like listen to the Major General song, and I was like, oh my god, like I can't believe I'm listening to this, but it's so
I
good.
have to go look it up. And we had a call out meeting at IU for the Gilbert and Sullivan Society. We're like in the process of casting our show that we're hopefully going to do in February. And we watched, somebody said, oh my God, I heard this on the Veggie Tales. There was someone who came in and was like, I've never heard of Gilbert and Sullivan. And I was like, you probably have. And I started playing my clips that I have all lined up. And she goes, is this what they sing on Veggie Tales? And I was like, I don't know, let's look it up, because I didn't grow up with Veggie Tales. I'm a little too old. Also, it's
It's
Christian.
Christian.
It's Christian, so I
Yeah.
never really experienced it. But but we played it, and it's public domain. So they just had vegetables sing Modern Major General straight up. And I was like, see, everybody knows this.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
it. I totally love it.
It's like a zucchini. It was a zucchini singing Modern Major General.
Yeah, sounds like
Yeah,
VeggieTales.
it's so good.
So you made a reference to like losing your voice, and
Mm.
again, one of the reasons that I look up to you so much is because you talk publicly about your injury. So
Yeah.
tell us about it.
Sure. So it's funny, we were talking about losing my voice every summer at camp. I did not realize that there was anything unusual about that.
Mm.
Um, and but I would like get to camp and be so excited to see my friends. And I think this was like a puberty thing, and this is a real thing that happens. I'm in a class right now actually with a speech language pathologist who's our professor. And we've been learning a lot about like pediatric voice and puberty and then aging voices and what happens. And one of the interesting things is that when you go from your child voice to your adolescent voice, you can no longer sustain the level of voice use that you could when you were a kid. Because if you think about like babies, most babies can cry all day and never lose their voice. Everything is right. It's
I
it's
never thought of that.
it's different for everybody. So like there are some horse babies and like little children who are hoarse, but that's also natural. I won't get too far into it, but because of the developments that happen in your vocal folds as you get older, you can't sustain that kind of long phonation. I mean, babies cry all day. They need to be able to be heard, and they need to be able to like get food. So they can cry all day because they have to let somebody know what their needs are. And
Mhm.
as you get older, the vocal folds kind of develop in such a way that you don't, well, as you no longer need to do that, the vocal folds develop more structure, and they
Mm.
become, the muscles get stronger, and so you can do more things, but you also can't do it as long or as sustained as you could when you were little. So I think that this kind of started for me as an adolescent, that I didn't really realize that I couldn't do quite as many things and for as long as I could when I was younger. And I started kind of losing my voice a lot, and having to be really like careful. One of my friends from high school, I saw him a few years later after I had vocal fold surgery, but I'll come to that in a second. But he said to me, I remember you could never go bowling because it was too loud. And if I tried to talk over a bowling alley, I would have no voice the next day. And I always needed to sing. I was singing all the time. And it was somebody once at theater camp, a voice teacher said to me, I came in and I was missing like, I don't know, A4, that's A on the staff for anybody watching. A4 and higher was just breath. was just air. My vocal folds were not coming together. And she was like, it's not supposed to be like that. Like that's not supposed to happen to you. And I've only recently unearthed the memory of somebody telling me that. But like my voice teacher in high school never said anything. I think I was really good at compensating for whatever issues. I took really good care of my voice. Like I like would go home and not talk, and I would like not go out with friends when I had a lot of singing to do because I just needed to be right. Right. And I just kind of thought, well, this is what you do if you're a serious singer. And like to a certain extent it is. Maybe you don't go to that loud smoky bar the night before a performance. That's okay. But you are not supposed to just not have a voice above a certain pitch. You're not. And in retrospect, like I kind of wish somebody had said, you should get checked out. And again, it makes me wonder where I'd be. I might still be in the exact same place I am now. I'm in a great place right now. I don't have any regrets. I just sometimes think about it. But anyway, so I went to college and I was a very enthusiastic voice major, as I have told you. And I did all the things. I was involved in as many things as I could possibly be involved in, and singing all the time and struggling with my vocal health and having a lot of problems and like not knowing what my voice was going to be the next morning. And then after sophomore year, I switched teachers, not because of this, but it just wasn't working out with my first teacher. And we had a very amicable separation. She was very kind. And I went to a different studio, and I was in a studio with a teacher who also taught voice pedagogy and who had ears of like gold. And there was actually, I think, an inquiry into this teacher at one point because a lot of people in her studio were presenting with vocal fold injuries or pathologies, but a lot of that was because they were coming from places where people couldn't hear the symptoms. And she was really well trained and had this pedagogy knowledge and could say, I'm hearing some air escaping. I'm hearing a little delay in your sound. You should go get checked out. But I remember like I had strep throat, which sucks no matter what, even if you're not a singer. But I lost my voice when I was sick, which fair. And then my body got better and my voice took like 2 extra weeks to be back to sort of fighting strength. And she said, it's supposed to bounce back faster than that. I think you should go get scoped. And so I went. And Chicago, luckily, we have the most incredible voice doctor. He's an ENT laryngologist who specializes in voice issues and singing voice in particular. He's out in Downers Grove. His name is Dr. Bastian, Robert Bastian. Very nice Canadian man. And I went, and they put the scope up your nose and the little camera down in your throat. I know I'm sorry, it's gross.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
And sure enough, he was like, yep, there are he said nodular swellings. And I was like, oh my God, can we just call it what it actually is? So I had nodes, and nodes are, if your vocal folds look like this, they attach in the front here and they vibrate like this, right? They're bilateral, one on each side, kind of calluses, and they are an overuse injury. So this is not like something that you can just randomly one day have. Nobody is born with it. It is purely an overuse injury. And so I, went back home and I was like, oh God, what do I do? And my teacher was gung-ho about me having surgery. Like having the surgery over the summer, coming back, being ready for senior year. I'm so glad I didn't do that because I wouldn't have been ready to come back for senior. Like I would have been fine, but I wouldn't have been comfortable yet. It took a lot longer than I thought it would. So I waited, and I did a summer program in between junior and senior year at Westminster Choir College. And I remember calling the doctor and saying, listen, if I do nothing, what happens? And he said, they're not going to like explode. That was literally what he said. He was like, they're not going to burst. The only way to make them worse is to abuse your vocal folds, is to, talk too much and sing too much and not take any breaks. So I did some voice therapy. I had some exercises that kind of kept me functional through the summer. And then I came back and I got a lead role in the opera at Northwestern. We did The Merry Widow, and It was a big deal. They had a new opera director and they brought in a guest conductor, and I was a secondary lead. I was Valenciennes, and it was so big for me. Speaking of an experience that was like, maybe I could do this professionally. This was one of those. Was me being like, huh. And we did this translation of the show. It's by Lehar, so who's German.
Mm-hmm.
German, Austrian. Oh my god, doctoral student. I don't know. I think he was German, but anyway, it's in German, and we did it in English. And the translation is by Sheldon Harnick, who wrote Fiddler on the Roof and a lot of other musicals. Who is also a Northwestern alum, and he came to see the show. Sheldon Harnick came to see the show.
Whoa! I didn't know he was alive.
Still alive, actually.
Oh, wow.
And this show was 2009. Yeah. And he came up and he came to me and he held my hands and he said, you were so beautiful. That was wonderful. And I was like, okay, I'm having surgery. Like, I can't, first of all, I was like, I could do this professionally. Second of all, the rehearsal process was so stressful because I never knew what my voice was going to do on any given day. I was so uncertain. I was so uncomfortable. Like, my muscles were working overtime. So I had like some like burning in my neck muscles, like lactic acid, because they were working so hard. I think that's what it is. I'm sorry to anybody who knows about this, but I had like this burning sensation in my muscles all the time. And it was awful. And I was stressed. And after that, and after meeting Sheldon Harnick and the experience with the director and the music director, I was like, okay, it's time. So that was February. And I went and did like 6 weeks of pre-op voice therapy, because you have to sort of prep the vocal folds to have the surgery. Had the surgery. It's an outpatient procedure. They put you under for like a couple of hours and then you go home. And I was on vocal rest for 4 days. And then I had to start doing my like prescribed 6 weeks of recovery exercises. And I also had voice therapy every 2 weeks, every week. I can't remember, but it was like a 6 week period of gradually increasing how much I was speaking and singing, what kinds of exercises I was doing. And at the end of 6 weeks, you're cleared. You're cleared to go do the thing. I was so not ready after 6 weeks. I had no baseline. There was no normal for me. Like, most people have a normal, and they're like, everything is great. And then something happens and they suddenly notice that things are not great anymore. But for me, things had been not great since I was 12. So like, I didn't have a normal. I didn't have anything to go back to. So I kind of had to start from scratch. And I did my senior recital 6 months after I had surgery, and applied to grad school also, which I didn't get in. So, but it's taken a really long time. There's still some stuff, like to this day, that is a holdover from notes and surgery. Surgery, not so much. I have to say, the surgery to me was not as it's traumatic and it's challenging, but it's the having had the injury for so long and having compensated for it for so long, that was harder to deal with after. So that was 2009, and it's, I was 21 and now I'm 33, and I'm still undoing some of the tension and the like psychological stuff. Yeah. So it was a really interesting experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so this happened. Wait, it was after you graduated or it was before you graduated? You went ahead.
No, I had the surgery in May of my senior year.
Okay.
So I technically didn't graduate until 2010. So I get all these emails that are like, Northwestern class of 2010. And I'm like, not really. But I walked in graduation. They were very nice. And they were like, because all I had left to do was my recital, they were like, you can still walk in graduation with all your classmates. And so I had a pretty normal graduation experience, which was very, very good. Because I think if I hadn't been allowed to walk, it would have been a whole other thing. But overall, like, that part of it was pretty normal. And I just finished up the last requirement like in November after that. And
you did your recital afterwards though?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was hard. I was out working at some like horrible desk job thing. And I was like trying to memorize my recital at the same time. And I remember my teacher, I did a set by Foray, French art song, and I'm a soprano. And so everything's always like, sing it in the high key. And because I was, compromised and I was still not at total fighting strength, my teacher was like, sing it in a lower key. Who cares? And I was like, oh, existential crisis. I don't want to sing it in a medium key. What kind of soprano am I? But that was a really valuable lesson, actually, about like letting yourself take it a little easy just to finish the thing. So, yeah, that's my vocal fold injury story, and I've been really vocal about it because I think I was told early on not to talk about it, and I think things are better now in terms of stigma. I think we're getting past like the point where you have to be like, don't tell anybody. But there are still people that I know who had surgery like between years of their masters and came back and didn't tell anybody and just came back and were like, here I am, I'm healthy now. And they didn't really talk about it. And I just think there's nothing to be ashamed of. I also, in this class that I'm taking right now, it's been this last week, we've done a deep dive, like deeper than I wanted to go, but a deep dive into vocal fold injuries and like looking at, like cancers and polyps and all kinds of things that can happen. We do not know why some people get nodules and some people don't. We don't know why two people with the same vocal use history and the same amount of singing every day, one of them gets a polyp and one of them never has a problem. We do not know. There is no research. I mean, I'm sure there's research, but like the research is not conclusive. So there was nothing that I could have done differently other than perhaps not beat the heck out of my vocal folds. But I didn't know that was what I was doing at the time. So like I was a kid. But plenty of people, can scream and laugh and talk and go bowling and never lose their voices. And it just so happened that for whatever reason, my body did what it did. And there was nothing I could have done to change it.
Wow.
Other than use my voice less.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nothing. I need to take in that there was nothing that you could have done to change it, because what I'm interested in is like, where does this stigma come from?
Yeah. It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? I think with singing injuries, with vocal fold problems, I think because everyone can sing, and because it doesn't happen to everyone, like there is nothing that says like if you abuse your vocal folds you will get nodes. There's no cause and effect. I mean, there is cause and effect, but there's no like, it's not like, I mean, I guess it kind of is like this. There are people who smoke their entire lives and never get lung cancer.
Yeah.
And we don't really know why that is. I mean, maybe like a predisposition or family history, but like people, you can have multiple people with the same behavior. And one of them experiences physical consequences from that behavior and the other one doesn't. And we just don't know why. And with singing, everyone can sing. Again, I think I said this at the beginning, everyone can sing, but not everyone can sing like an elite opera singer can sing. But I think people look at singing and they don't see the sort of internal choreography that goes into it and the athleticism of it. And so they don't see it the way they see like carpal tunnel or for a pianist or a violinist. They don't, or like a football player getting injured or having to have knee surgery. It happens all the time. And nobody is like, what did he do wrong? They're like, well, that's the nature of the sport, because they like hit each other and get piled up. And you can see how much I know about football. But I think there's something sort of shameful about a vocal fold injury because it's something that so many people do all the time and never experience. Like, it just happens to some people and doesn't happen to other people. And I
Hmm.
think there's something about that that's like, well, you must have done something wrong.
Hmm.
And often, a use injury is called that for a reason. It does arise from overuse of the
Hmm.
vocal folds, or potentially poor technique, although that's not even a lot of Wagnerian singers who are doing big opera will have like soft nodules at the end of a run of a show, just from the effort of doing what they do. And you know they go on vocal rest, they do some voice therapy, and they're gone. It's a thing that happens in the course of doing your job. um, but I think um, there's definitely a sense of like, well, what did you do?
Yep.
What did you do wrong that this happened? And we see it with like Adele, pop singers, Adele and oh gosh, there was another high profile one that I can't remember. Adele's the big one who comes to mind.
I didn't realize she'd had vocal problems.
Oh yeah, she's had surgery. I think she's had surgery more than once, and she's had to cancel. She's had to stop touring.
Oh my God.
Which there's part of me that's like, touring is unreasonable for like everyone.
Hmm.
Most people can't sustain the level of vocal use that you have to be able to sustain. She just happens to be someone who um, gets nodules
Hmm.
and had a because some people. I mean, I don't know who am I thinking of, Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger, or like Paul McCartney, or like all these guys, or women too, I'm sure, who go on these grueling touring schedules and don't have nodules.
Hmm.
And Adele, just the nature of her vocal production and what makes it special is kind of hard on the vocal folds. There's some elements to it that it's like, this is amazing and also maybe unsustainable.
Hmm.
Um, and but also just the schedule, the nonstop of it all, the bad sleep, the probably not nourishing your body very well because you're
Hmm.
on the road and you're eating whatever's there and that kind of thing. And I think um I don't think it's that she did something wrong. I think it's that this is an unreasonable and unsustainable schedule. So she, I think, is sort of sticking with recording.
Hmm.
And also recording makes things really unrealistic
Oh
also,
yeah.
because she needs to sound like her recordings in concert, and she can't.
Hmm.
Nobody can. Nobody can.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff, but I think the stigma really comes from the fact that we can't explain why some people have vocal injuries or performance injuries and some people don't. And it looks like something that anybody can do. That singing looks like something that anybody can do. So what did you do wrong? How
Hmm.
did you cause this? Um, and it's not necessarily anything that anybody does. It's just you know, schedules. too, too much use is the answer.
Yeah, and that's so interesting what you told me about not everybody getting it from the same amount of use, because I think I always had a complex in college about not practicing enough, because
Right.
even though the amount of practicing I did, I mean, it was fine for everything I needed to do, but I am not a person who can be in the practice room 5 or 6 hours a day. Like if
Yeah.
I do like 4 hours, that's a lot for me, and the next day I'm not going to be able to do anything. Like I'm
Right.
like 2 3 hours max,
Well,
right?
and like you've told me about your performance injury and you've talked about it.
Yeah,
But I'm sure that there are percussionists who practice, a million hours a day and don't experience it necessarily.
exactly. And that's why it's just, it's really embarrassing. Like I feel embarrassed about it, and
Right.
every time I post a video about it, like those videos I've noticed don't get a lot of views. And I'm like, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. But then I'm like, no, and Slovin talked about it, so I'm gonna talk about
I
it.
think it's so important. I think it's so important. And I have a student um, who probably won't see this, but I won't mention her name. But I've had a student in my class who experienced vocal fold problems and was out of class a lot because of the stress and the sort of trauma of dealing with all of this. And if someone feels comfortable coming to me and telling me about this because I've been so open, then that's the goal. That's a victory for me. Is I'm like, I've been through this. I've been through the part of it that's like, don't tell anyone, and I don't want anyone else to go through that, because I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think we need to be really open, and we need to talk about what recovery looks like. We need to talk about surgery and what it means. We need to, I think we need to be more open in all instruments, and we need to create an environment where people feel comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, I have also experienced a performance injury.
Mm.
And I think by talking about it, you never know who is going to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe somebody who isn't even going to tell you that they saw it. And this is actually a lot of how I approach social media. But you never know who is going to stumble onto your video where you talk about your performance injury and how you deal with it and how you feel about it. And they're going to resonate with that. And they're going to be like, I needed to hear somebody say that out loud. Like, even if you don't know who they are, because I don't always know. And sometimes I post like, hey, this is my like every other year post saying that I've had a vocal fold injury and you should come talk to me if you need like support. And every time I get a message from someone who didn't comment and didn't say anything and just sends me a message and is like, hey, I'm so glad you said that, because I've been dealing with this year and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. I was like, there it is. That's the important thing. And you and I, hadn't been in very close contact in a long time, but it's something that you noticed about me.
Yeah.
And you read on my social media, and that's important to me, that it helped you in some way also to talk about yours. So
yeah,
that's my goal.
Definitely. And I'm, I don't even know. I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, most of my income comes from teaching. I'm working hard to figure out how to make the performance part happen for me, because I like to teach and it's also really frustrating, right? So my talk is like, I don't deserve to get better because I don't make enough money from performing to pay for all the treatment that I need to be able to perform. And that's really crappy. And I don't like that that's there, but it's definitely there. And I've even gotten it from like practitioners that I've been to see. Like someone I went to see here in San Diego was like, are you married? Like, how can you afford to be here? She didn't say those words.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I knew that's why she was asking me, because she was like, well, where do you play? Well, how many rehearsal calls do you have per week? Oh, so you're mostly a teacher. Oh, are you married?
But also teaching though, and I come at this from a voice teacher. I mean, I'm a private voice teacher, and I teach classroom college voice pedagogy, not like elementary school. But I think I commented this on your video, or on something that you posted about teachers and injuries, and that people think that, it was the one about bad advice.
Yeah.
Bad advice, because someone once told me, when I was deciding whether or not to have surgery, somebody once told me, well, you're too good of a singer to like go be an elementary school teacher or something. And what I know now is that I never could have been an elementary school teacher with nodules, because my goodness, that is some of the highest voice use ever. Teachers are professional voice users.
Yeah.
Professional voice users, especially music teachers. A lot of voice teachers have to go get voice therapy, or they have nodules or polyps or other issues. Teachers are like a big percentage of the patients at any given like SLP, speech language pathologist practice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think teaching, like, it's just as important for you to be healthy and to not have a performance injury as a teacher as it is as a performer. Like, it really bothers me that this doctor kind of devalued the teaching work, because you really kind of have to be at your best.
You do.
To teach other people. And especially, you work in a school, right? You work. And so what is your class? Do you have classes, or do you teach private mostly?
Well, I do private lessons, but I also teach drum classes where I've got, I work in a private school, so I don't have those crazy public school numbers, thank heavens. But like, I do have, like, I've got this class of 19 seventh graders. And
Oof.
the way they've got the schedule this year, they're in the afternoon. They're the last class of the day every single day. They're fresh from PE. They're squirrely as all get out. And then they've got drums. And it's just like, why am I even here?
Of course, my first thought is trying to talk in that room, but that's because I'm a vocal.
Oh no, no, it's impossible. It is literally
Yeah.
like it is impossible.
Yeah, can't speak over it. But also, like, teachers have to be good at what they are teaching. Like,
Right.
I've never bought into that whole like those who can't do teach. I think that's ridiculous. But also, you need to be able to show them technique. You need to be able to show them how to, how to play their instruments. And if you have a performance injury, that's harder to do.
It
It,
is.
it and it makes no difference whether most of what you do is teaching the instrument that you play, or performing on the instrument you play. You still need to be at, at your best performing strength. And like,
Mm.
I think, God, that really bothers me that the teaching was like a reason for you not to get treatment.
Yeah, it bothered me
Bonkers.
too. It bothered
Oh
me
my
too.
gosh.
But
Yeah.
you know, as you were talking though, I was thinking about, so how has your experience with having the injury, how does that inform what you're doing now as a teacher?
Oh, it's huge. It's like, and anybody who's ever told me not to talk about it, I can't. It's like a huge part of who I am as a teacher and a performer. But it gives me some insight into the psychology of any kind of vocal issues. Like, I don't know what kind of teacher I would be. And these people are also excellent teachers. Like, I'm not saying that you have to have a voice injury, but I don't know what kind of teacher I would be, or even if I'd be teaching, if I hadn't been through this time of like everything is hard.
Mm.
Everything's always been hard, honestly. I with my energy with my injury, everything was hard. Technique does not come naturally to me, even if it sounds like it does. Like, I compensate. I'm a really good faker. But everything's been hard. Like, recovering from surgery is hard. Having a voice injury is hard, and it makes me, I think, more sensitive to when things are hard for my students, and what it feels like when nothing is working, and
Mm.
what it feels like when singing just feels like the most impossible thing in the world. And I also have had students with voice injuries. I had one recently who has an amazing, like, contralto, low instrument, beautiful. And I kind of forgot what it feels like. She didn't have surgery, but she did a long period of voice therapy before she came for lessons. And I forgot what it feels like to come back after that, and like the fear of re-injury, and the fear of exploring parts of your voice that weren't there before, and that kind of thing. And we had a couple of really rocky lessons where finally she had to say to me, like, I'm sorry, you're making me feel like I don't feel safe to do this, because I feel like I'm going to re-injure myself. And I'm so grateful for that student who was able to say, here's what I need from you. But it makes me, I think, more open to adjusting for that kind of thing, even if it's not an injury. I have an adult student right now who had thyroid surgery a long time ago, like 10 years at this point, and it impacted her voice, which it can, like, if a surgeon isn't careful, or if
Mhm.
it doesn't, like, in the end, the important thing is to be healthy, So a lot of surgeons, like, if someone has cancer and they need to, and it's in this area, the more important thing is to be cancer free, right? It's more important to have physical function than it is to have a voice that you can use. You figure that out after. But my student had some vocal issues around her thyroid surgery. She took a ton of time off and was just silent, didn't talk for a long time, and then kind of came back and finds that she has low stamina, finds that she can't sing the way that she did, and speaking is hard. And she's afraid also of causing herself pain when she makes sounds. She's afraid of doing something to her vocal folds. And so I have to really, adjust the way that I would normally work with a student, like somebody with a perfectly ordinarily functioning set of vocal folds and larynx. If you come to someone who doesn't have that, you have to adjust the way that you talk to them, and you have to find new vocabulary and new language to help them achieve their goals. So I think having been through it really helps me. It also means that I get to show my pedagogy students pictures of my vocal folds. So I can be like, look, these are not someone else's nodules, these are my nodules. And you get to see them. And now I have this great video of this year's vocal folds with the like, the like little swelling and the prominent blood vessels where my professor was like, hmm, this is interesting. And I was like, shh, I don't want to hear that. Yeah, so I think it's a really big part of who I am and how I operate as in all parts of my life, really. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Thank
really,
you.
really cool. And so what's coming up next for you? I know you mentioned you're finishing up. Is it a DMA?
Yeah, I think it's just technically just a DM at IU, but it's the
Oh,
same thing.
okay.
Doctor of Music as opposed to Doctor of Musical Arts. I don't know if there's a difference. The IU program is very academic. It's 3 years of coursework. I think maybe a DMA is shorter.
Okay.
Maybe a DMA is 2 years. I don't actually know. Don't quote me. But I think, anyway, it's a DM. And I will be done with coursework after next semester.
Yay.
And I'm teaching, this is my second year teaching undergraduate voice pedagogy, which is sort of, it's like half vocal anatomy and what the instrument looks like and how it's put together, and half how to teach it. So my students can graduate and teach some voice lessons if they want, which is my goal. But I'm also teaching, I think we're like 99% sure, a class on the American musical next semester, which I'm really excited about. And I don't have to create the syllabus, it already exists. I just have to teach it. Yeah, and I'm giving my second doctoral recital on November 14th, which is very exciting. Hoping to live stream it. I will definitely be recording it.
I was gonna ask because I'd really like to see that.
Yeah, it's funny because last year, like we're still in like COVID land, but last year with everything totally shut down and like they weren't allowing anyone extra to come to campus at all. So the school was providing really high quality live streams of all of the recitals. And they're not doing that anymore because now people are allowed to come. And I'm like, but my family still can't come. So, but I think I will probably set up a live stream like on Facebook, public live stream for family and friends.
Awesome.
And I will record it. I will have it recorded, hopefully. So we'll have like a nice high quality video of that. And I'm hoping, we're still waiting. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I have a callback on Thursday for IU opera. I don't know.
Awesome.
It's probably a little secret, but whatever. Nobody's gonna watch this. Not nobody, but like,
I do know exactly what you mean.
You know what I mean? Hopefully the IU Opera Theater people will not be watching this, and anybody who watches this and is like, I didn't get a call back, I'm so sorry. They're very secretive and I don't know why. They should just post it on the wall like everything else. But I'm hoping to be a part of IU Opera Theater productions in the spring. That'd be great. And then the Gilbert and Sullivan Society is hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, we're doing Trial by Jury in February, which is their very first collaboration. It's a one act. It's a really goofy, like lampooning of the British court system, which is pretty fun. Hopefully that's going to happen in February. And other than that, just like getting this degree done. After I'm done with coursework, I have final exams to take, and then a dissertation on something. So still thinking about that.
A dissertation.
Yeah.
That is a lot, and that's all really exciting. And I know I'm stoked for your recital, so please make sure to invite me and bug me. And,
I absolutely will.
I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. This was
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I hope it was I don't know. I hope it was as fun for you as it was for me. It was really nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I will see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.